Hi there, and welcome to the Chattering Hour with me, your host, Nicholas Vince. And speaking of hosts, this week I am joined by the voice of that ghoulish host with the most, actually probably moist, the Crypt Keeper himself, Mr. John Kassir. We talk about how he landed that role, Reefer Madness, the musical, voicing Eliot in Pete's Dragon, and much, much more right after this. And we're back with Mr. John Kassir, who voiced the Crypt Keeper in the TV series, a kids' animated show, and in the movies. John has nearly 300 IMDb credits and doesn't really seem to be slowing down. Let's get started. John, thank you so much for joining me here today.
My pleasure.
Cool. And I'm going to take you all the way back to when you grew up in Baltimore. And I
One of the original colonies, named after Lord Baltimore in Maryland.
So,
the Baltimore accent is based on the Cockneys that came off the ships. I mean, it was influenced by that. It was funny because John Oliver the other night was trying to Stephen Colbert was trying to get John Oliver to do a Baltimore accent. He's like, he goes, I wouldn't even start. I couldn't even begin. And I'm like, it's almost British. It's almost Cockney. Everybody talks like this in Balmer, Maryland, hon. This guy, cracked his head open on the pavement and had to call the ambulance and the police and the whole deal. Yeah, it's a lazy palate. It's like a Cockney, but people are like, where did that come from? It's, lazy palate.
Well, I mean, it's extraordinary to me because, of course, to me, the Cockney accent is the one where the jaw doesn't move. It's just locked. I mean, if you just don't move your jaw.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
where it's evolved, and now, of course, the London accent is the most popular, or whatever that is. It's just
Yes, yeah, the night because of the crown and yes, they're terribly, terribly nice. Received pronunciation, as we called it at drama school. We've already wandered off into voices. I thought we might do.
No, that's fine. It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
It's where it all started, like you said, in Baltimore as a kid. So
Right.
please ask your
So
question.
when did the acting bug bite you, or was it voices first, or how did you kind of get into the whole thing?
Well, I mean, I was very creative kid, not very present. People put things in front of me to learn. I didn't really, transpose that well. Um, but of course, entertainment was a really good way to get me to, focus. I spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time addicted to cartoons. As I mean, cartoons were obviously, kind of like the, you know, uh, kid's first fix. It's the
Yeah.
closest thing to hallucinogenics a child can take. With the merry melodies. And I would imitate all the stuff on the TV set. I had two brothers and two sisters who hated me for it, but I'd get down there on Saturday mornings. Back then you didn't have a remote control. It was a knob on the TV set with three channels, and the UHF, which you couldn't get unless you held a mirror up to the screen and fooled around with the antenna in the back or whatever. But I'd turn to the channel that I wanted to watch and then hide the knob. So but I think by the time I got into, I really started loving it. I got into plays even when I was in elementary school. I loved doing that. I was dyslexic and they didn't really know what that was back then. They just said I was lazy and didn't pay attention and didn't do my work. And of course, to me, it was, you know, they'd be like, here, take this workbook home and fill in the blanks. And I was like, well, I can't read the sentences to fill in the blanks. With five
Yeah.
kids, my parents couldn't keep up on each one of us, what was at home and that kind of thing. And so, it wasn't until like my second time in third grade that I had a teacher who was like, he's really good when he gets up in front of people and he reads this stuff. He actually reads it, I mean, it comes to life. And I remember reading some, in fact, I was just mentioning this to my wife yesterday because she's been teaching as part of her, COVID work.
Mhm.
She's an actress, but teaching elementary school, and they were talking about finding stuff for the kids to perform or read. And I was like, well, I remember my first thing was a poem about a giant with red shoes. I can't remember the poem exactly, but I remember that's what it was about. And I remember getting up in front, reading in front of the class, and everybody was like, "Wow, he's really good. What would he? He becomes the giant and the whole thing." And that teacher helped me, do better in school because I was
Mm.
able to start orally doing my tests and this kind of thing. And by the time I think I was in like my last year of elementary school, which is
Oh,
the sixth grade for here in the States, I was doing plays with my good buddy Fred. And by the time we got into, and we'd do all the talent shows, he'd wheel me out on a dolly and you know, we'd do like Blackadder type stuff. It
right.
wasn't Blackadder type stuff because we didn't know what that was. But, to describe what you guys would know as a two-guy team,
Yeah.
doing stupid, funny routines where I'd be a 3-in-1 machine and he'd sell me and I'd turn into an orange juicer, a washing machine and a popcorn popper, and stuff like that. And I would do this bit where I would do the Wizard of Oz, and I think back then probably took me 10-12 minutes to get through the movie. I think I do it now in 2.5 minutes, with all the characters. Um, but by the time we were in high school, we wound up being the guys who did all the special morning announcements. It's like the following morning announcement brought to you by a grant from the Mobile Corporation. Bum, 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 ba, 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 and we do the beat. John, Paul, George, Ringo. Hey, you're going to the gymnastics troop event tonight. We'd imitate the teachers, and we'd imitate, and we'd have a blast. It was such a good time. I think we did like the fund drive for the yearbook. So they dedicated like a 2-page spread with everybody who had donated names over top of us sitting at the microphones. And I think that was probably my first real, performance crack at doing voiceover work. Up until then, most of it was stage work as an actor.
Right.
And I had dreamed of being a stage actor. Of course, you don't realize how little it pays, you know, uh, until you get to New York. I got my first off Broadway show right out of college. I'd studied theater at Towson University, which has a great reputation. And I had people in my class like Charles Dutton, who people know as Rock, who had his own series and did a number of movies. What was he in? Which Aliens was Rock in? But I can't remember. But um, you know, and Dwight Schultz, who of course was Man Murdoch on the A Team, and but also did Broadway with Crucifer of Blood with Maggie Smith, and played
Right.
Oppenheimer and Fat Man and Little Boy. Great actors. Uh, we didn't go to school together, and we never did any productions together. But he used to come back and do workshops with us. Was John Glover. Um, had graduated from where I went to school. So we took ourselves seriously in the work we did, but they were also colorful type actors that you had as your predecessors that kind of gave you an idea of where this could go. Um, and I probably at that age was a better performer than I was an actor. I didn't understand how to put myself into it as much as become other characters, which has kind of served me as a voice actor as I've gotten older. But and then of course my own on-camera stuff as I've gotten older involves more of me in them because I am, I've grown into my own age and character and know how to do that more.
Right. Right.
But as those things go, right out of college, I got offered a off-Broadway show in New York, paid $175 a week, which even back in 1980 was, shit to get paid uh, to live in New York. I think
Yeah.
I had 3 roommates. in a one bedroom apartment, up in Spanish Harlem.
Right.
And, but eventually, found street performing, which was a good way when I wasn't getting theater gigs, which were very far and few between, paid theater gigs. I did a lot of sketch comedy and continued to do that kind of thing with a comedy group called Animal Crackers that had launched out of Baltimore. And we had moved it all up to New York and did, tours for the USO where they sent us all over the world doing comedy for, guys stationed on some island somewhere, or you'd be in Athens one day for a couple of days, and then you'd be on, some little island called Lampedusa off the coast of Libya, you know, uh, performing for 14 Coast Guard guys, and it was a pretty incredible experience. We got to see the world, and it, created my love of traveling the world. And my wife and I love it. We go all over the place. Sadly, we don't get to do it right now,
No.
but I think we'd be in Scotland right now in Borthwick Castle or something, um, doing one of their, their famous dinners or something. And you know, where Mary, Queen of Scots, tried to make her escape, staying in her maid's quarters or whatever. But um, that's it. Really, all these different things launched what has become my career, defined my career. From having the opportunity to do different things that have kept me working for the last almost 41 years now, steadily as an actor.
Yeah,
Um,
because I know you back in 1985 you defeated Sinbad for best stand-up comic on Star Search. So this was so you were also doing stand-up as well as group work.
yeah, it's a strange story, and some people have heard it before, but not a lot of people, because it's almost a different. It's like our fan base from Tales from the Crypt is becoming a completely different age group, because they were kids we didn't know kids were watching the show. Of course, that the fact that they grew up with it makes them more passionate about it than the people who were adults watching it at the time. And HBO was new and newish, and so not everybody had it and that kind of thing. But I was, because I was street performing and had done sketch comedy, I had like some bits that I could actually plug into a stand-up act.
Right.
I remember my first couple of routines going onto the stand-up stage, and when people start yelling at you from the audience or something and you get hecklers, I didn't have any real way to deal with that, because I kind of had an act, you know what I mean? It was like
Yeah.
set, but you say a few funny things like, hey lady, you seem like a classy woman. What do you put behind your ears to attract men? I mean, besides your knees, boom, stuff like this. And you know, you either get laughs or you get booed off the stage, depending on how defensive the audience was. But I hadn't really done stand-up comedy, but I had gotten in an off-Broadway show that got a lot of it. Really, I credit it for launching my, the career that's continued throughout my most of my adult lifetime. The show was called Three Guys Naked from the Waist Down, which it was like a metaphor for how it feels in front of an audience when you're bombing as a stand-up comic.
Right.
And think of it being like Dreamgirls, like the musical,
Uh-huh.
but with stand-up comics.
Right.
So the entire cast was only three guys, and it was myself and Scott Bakula, who was pretty much unknown other than the theater world back then, and Jerry Colker, who had come from doing Pippin on Broadway and Chorus Line, and he and Michael Rupert was a big Tony Award winner, and played the lead in March of the Falsettos and stuff like that. They wrote this show originally for themselves, but because they were so involved in writing it, they wound up casting it outside, except for Jerry wound up doing the part of the angry comic, and Scott played the quintessential MC, and I played, the Andy Kaufmanish suicidal, would come out and record hanging himself on stage for a laugh and then walking off stage, kind of stuff. And it became like the toast of the town for the run that we had, and everybody assumed I was a stand-up comic because I was playing this very dark but very funny, material. Was like, Robin Williams. It was designed to be very, very well polished, but look completely improvised. And years later, when I got to do improv with Robin on stage at the Improv in LA many years later, I realized that was his genius. Was he had very polished, a very intelligent man who had very polished material that he could improvise his way through and feed off of, which was what had transpired with my street act in front of the
Mm.
Metropolitan Museum in New York, which was the premier place to have a spot. And you could have anywhere from a couple of dozen people when the weather wasn't good to 500 people sitting on the steps watching you perform. So while I was doing the show, Star Search was just launching its first season, and as they got towards the end of the season, they already had their people who were going to be competing for the semifinals in the first season, including Brad Garrett, who won that year. And so they wanted some new comics to come in to start what would bleed over into the second season. And I won. They asked me to do it. Now, at first, I got approached and they were like, "We want you to come on to Star Search." And I'm like, "Well, I know this is a musical and I sing, but." And Sam Harris, if you know who he is like one hell of a singer. I mean,
Mm.
he creamed everybody in the first season of Star Search, and went on to do Broadway and cut his own albums, and I mean, really, really talented singer. And I was like, I can sing, but I'm not Sam Harris. They go, no, 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 we want you to come on as a stand-up comic. And I go, I'm not really a stand-up comic, right? I'm just playing it in the play. They go, well, you can win $100,000. I went, have you seen my fucking act, man? So, I did everything from picking little bits of my act from when Fred and I used to do the morning announcements, to doing the Wizard of Oz routine, to doing sketch comedy that I did with Animal Crackers, to part of my street act, and built these 2.5 minute bits, because every time you won, you had to do a new one. And I put together enough of them that I was able to continue to win through the season and come back in the semifinals and beat Rosie O'Donnell in the semifinals and beat Sinbad in the finals and win $100,000. And and they're like, okay, you're going to be opening for Tom Jones in Vegas. And I was like, everybody's like, pat me on the back. Oh my God, you're going to open for Tom Jones. I go, how am I going to do that? I have no fucking act. How am I going to open? I was like, I have these bits that I did, but I don't have an act. And they go like, okay, well, as an opening act, you only have to have 20 minutes. So, of course, people wanted to book me as a headliner and stuff too. I had to have at least an hour and a half material. So I got my ass into the clubs and I started working up my act. And because I didn't really have any jokes per se, or I wasn't really a monologist, a lot of my act was characters and voices. And my act was based on a guy who had grown up in the pop culture of television and had become addicted to it. And so he could change channels on himself, and his attempt to, refrain from breaking into television or watching television. He would, Tourette's television, and everything from Scotty, beat me out of here. I can't, Captain. I've already got up to work. Factor H is going to blow. He's dead, Jim. Damn you and your green Vulcan blood Spock. And then cut into the Wizard of Oz as mayor of the Munchkin City in the county of the land of Oz, and go in and out of all these shows. And all of a sudden I'm getting cast in comedy pilots. And, my first series was First and 10 on HBO, which was their first series. And I played a Bulgarian field goal kicker who could kick 60-yard field goals, and if you know anything about American football, that's far. And it was just a really funny character. And it was a show that launched careers. Chris Maloney from SV, from Law and Order SVU was a quarterback on the show. Jason Begay, a couple of seasons was a quarterback on the show, who's on Chicago Cop. This guy talks like this all the time. O.J. Simpson played the general manager, and he was also a producer and expert trying to bring bring reality to the show, so that had that kind of feel to it. And we'd have all these football stars on the show as well. So, and they couldn't really give them like heavy acting things. So I would get like the funniest storylines. I mean, they'd put me in bed with women, and I'd hey, I'm Zagreb Shkanuski. I kick field goals for the California Bulls. I fuck you both. Yes, stuff. Oh, she likes me. And HBO knew that I did all these voices and characters and stuff, and the casting from when they were starting to put together Tales from the Crypt contacted my agents and said, we like John to audition. And I was like, and I had read the comic books as a kid, and I was just like, I can't, I still even have like, these are all images from the original comic book characters, the Crypt Keeper, the Old Witch, and the Vault Keeper, But so I was like, I just thought it was going to be some weird little cult show, especially HBO, since HBO wasn't like network. I mean, as much fun as I was having on First and 10, I was frustrated by the fact that, not enough people were seeing it to get any kind of acclaim or get me the next job and that kind of stuff. And I was getting pilots and other network shows. I remember my first network pilot was with Sid Caesar, who was already in his 70s by then, but it was kind of like a Broadway Danny Rose, the Woody Allen film where we all hung out in the deli with our agent, and an old comic, an old Vegas comic named Jan Murray played our agent, and we had Maurice Hines from the Hines brothers on the show, and and Annie Golden, who's from Orange is the New Black, but she was also a big Broadway actress at the time, Leader of the Pack, and all these great shows. And I played the young comic hanging out with all the older comics, and so that's how people were viewing me. They thought I was a stand-up comic, not an actor who had come out of the theater. So it was kind of like fighting my way back onto getting acting work. And when I went down to audition for Kevin Yeager in his studio, it was a real treat because I got to see all this stuff that he had created. He was making the puppet for the Crypt Keeper, but he also had, designed Freddy Krueger's look and Chucky and all these different things. And I'm sitting in his studio, like you talk about a kid in a candy store. And I can see all, preparing to audition for the Crypt Keeper, and they're reading the puns and they're going, be careful what you ask for. You may get it. Oh, this stuff sucks. And I'm sitting there going, no, these guys don't get it. I was like, this is Shakespeare to this guy, this is all the alliteration reminded me of how much Alfred Hitchcock used to love to have those dark alliterative intros into Hitchcock Presents, so I immediately thought to make him, give him a bit of British. And, and then when I saw the puppet with all the holes in his throat and the rotting flesh and the teeth, I wanted to give him the texture, and juiciness of, the character. And, and then I thought I'd give him a cackle, kind of like the Wicked Witch of the West, from having done that all those years. And, but it was as I was doing it for Kevin, and he didn't really have a sound studio. He just had a boom box with a little microphone that clipped on, so I could record for him on a cassette tape, so he could listen back, and play it with the puppet later and that kind of thing as he was auditioning everybody in the back of his studio, and he had like clay sculptures all around you and stuff like that. So the scene was kind of set, and I started doing it. Be careful what you ask for. You may get it. And I'm doing this, and he's laughing. He's like, like, do more of that, do more of that. And he's laughing, and I start laughing. And I'm like, oh, great. The Crypt Keeper laughs at his own jokes. I love this, So I, continued to do that for him. And I don't think it might have been even like the next day, but it was within a day or two that he had me doing it for Joel Silver and Richard Donner, two of the biggest in the film industry, in their office. And they offered me the job in their office, and they go, okay, we'll see you on the set. And I'm just like, you don't, as an actor, you don't believe that until somebody actually calls your agent, books you, and you have you're actually doing it. It's like, no, why you were doing that, we got, we got Steve Buscemi while you were, he wanted to do it, and so, forget it.
So you mentioned going on the set. Did you actually record live on the set, or did you pre-record the
Oh,
voice
we
and then?
pre-recorded most everything because, A, for the sound, and B, so that it took 3 puppeteers just to make the face work. So you had more puppeteers if you had the feet working, and of course the hands working and that kind of stuff. So on average, they had 4 or 5 puppeteers, and as many as 6 to coordinate in that buraku style of puppetry, to bring the Crypt Keeper to life. So they had to coordinate like a music video. So I would pre-record it, and Kevin would come in. And in later years, also, I would have Gil Adler, who became the producer on the show, who kept it on the air so many years, with his expertise. But and I'd improvise a little bit. But I remember the first time we went in, I started going, "All right, kiddies," blah, blah, blah. And Kevin's like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa." They didn't give us much money for the Crypt Keeper to build him, so his mouth moves really slow and small. So can you make him talk slower? I was like, okay, we'll make that adjustment. So if you look at the first season or two, the Crypt Keeper talks slower and more ominously. Well, fear fans, so it's a little more creepy, but it's fun. I really love that version of the Crypt Keeper. And then, of course, as the show got its acclaim, and we got to get a little more budget to polish it up. Kevin put more servos in them. Those are the little hobbyist motors that they use for like model airplanes and stuff. And was able to make him so we could give him more of that stand-up kind of delivery that most people remember the Crypt Keeper as, which was more my delivery. But I love the way it evolved. I mean, eventually we had him doing impersonations of other people. I'd crack them up by doing, the Crypt Keeper is Stanley Kowalski and the Streetcar Named Desire. The next thing I know, it's one of the, it's one of the wraparounds, or
Yeah, I
I
see
don't know.
that.
We're
Yeah.
talking about somebody that we knew was a producer, or somebody was dating a Playboy bunny, and they go, "I love a girl who'll give you head and then let you keep it." The next thing I know, it's a spot. The Crypt Keeper sitting there with a box of chocolates and a dead corpse next to him, and her head falls in his lap, and he delivers that line, and I'm just like, oh, this is great. So it evolved so well over the years. And honestly, I really hadn't done much professional voiceover work before then. So really, it was the Crypt Keeper. People are like, wow, the Crypt Keeper is your biggest well-known voice. How long were you a voice actor before you got that part? It was really my first big voiceover job, and launched my voiceover career. And as you know, as an actor, as you get older, they're just, you can get parts, and probably you're doing your best work. You're probably, there are less out there for you. It's more
Mm.
competitive because the other actors are good too that are still around, and you get paid less for it. But as a voice actor, you're not typed out by your age. It used to be race. Now they try to stick within race, but gender, or even whether you're, even whether you're human or not. I, somewhere along the line, after doing Miko the raccoon for Pocahontas, it launched a whole second voiceover career for me, doing animals and creatures and monsters and that kind of stuff. Um, Everything from, Miko the raccoon, and I've been doing stuff for Disney on a regular basis. They've been really good to me, and Worked on Planet of the Apes doing apes, and then, on all the Minion movies doing all kinds of little Eastern European guys and stuff like that. And then um, got to do Eliot in the new Pete's Dragon, and just recently working on a new project for them, where I play a squirrel. I won't mention the name of it because I don't know if I'm allowed to yet, but they didn't tell me not to. Most of them do, but this one was really great. And he's a title character in it.
Oh,
And
cool.
and most of those I got because I live in a wooded area where these animals live. So they're like, I imitate the squirrels to get my dogs all worked up. I have two border collies that go nuts when I do the squirrel. So it's very funny. They go running around. They don't know it's me. They go running around looking out the window. So
You mentioned Pete's Dragon. I was going to ask you about that because I was watching it last night, funnily enough. And I was wondering because he doesn't have exactly words.
no,
You're vocalizing his emotion so beautifully. So was this the kind of the reverse of Crypt Keeper? You were given the footage.
it was in this case. Yeah. The squirrel stuff like that I'm doing now, there's a lot of it that's already, uh, people work different ways. Miko the
Mm.
raccoon, I recorded most of the stuff, probably 75, 80% of the stuff before they, to storyboards before they animated any of it. Then they add stuff that you go back and ADR, add to later to
Mm.
picture or to moving drawings. They
Yeah.
may not have even fully animated it yet. Um, and The movie I just did with the squirrel, they had so much of it animated, but there was so much of it and so many different things that weren't filled in yet that we created a library of things that they could use and a number of different versions of each scene and that kind of thing. Pete's Dragon was really well done, pretty far along, and they were trying to do it with real animal sounds and lions and that kind of thing. But Oakes, the young actor who played Pete, was
Mm.
so good playing opposite a tennis ball on a pole that, once they animated it, they realized that they needed something that was as alive as he was.
Ah.
And so they brought me in just to do some looping on another character that they needed just for a test audience because the actor was in New Zealand or something, and and it was a ploy to get me in so that they could go, "Can you take a shot at this, dragon?" Because they needed to convince people, of course, who have money and this kind of thing, that you need to pay somebody to come in and do this. And so they had me do it, and of course, everybody was convinced that that's what it needed. And the editor I've known for years and years and years, Lisa Churgan, who's an amazing editor, and she was insistent that they bring me in and try, after we did what we did. And she and I spent a lot of time. I mean, normally it wouldn't have been that many sessions, but I think we had like 10, 11 full sessions, um, doing all the bringing him to life and coming up with his purrs and his, what he sounded like when he got fierce. And a lot of it I had to do. I mean, normally, there's just you lose certain, when you manipulate your voice, you lose certain amounts of range and what you can do in it. So a lot of it I had them do in my range so that I could get all the different sounds and the emotions, and then have them, build it, lower it, and build it into the sound, um, so
Mm.
that it matched the size of this creature, and which is really, it was really a treat to do. It was, and luckily it was mostly, there's a sound engineer over at Disney, goes by the name of Doc, that we all know. And it was Doc, Lisa, and I doing most of that, in a room together, in a large sound stage together, for hours upon hours to get that right. So it's not, that's not easy. And sometimes when something's not working, they're like, no, I'm not hearing that. You're breaking out into that sweat. It's like, okay, uh, you know, and I think I've been fired from one job in my entire life, and uh, yeah, as you know, every actor thinks you're getting fired the first day,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that you'll
yeah,
never
yeah.
work again, and the whole thing. So, in those instances, there's a certain amount of relaxation in the idea that there's only a handful of guys in the whole business that can even do it, and I won't name who they are because I don't want them to go hiring them, but I'm sure they say the same thing about me. But it's not an easy task to bring across.
Mm.
So you know, I feel fortunate. I feel fortunate to continue to work in this business and make a living at it. And
I was curious because I mean, I think obviously with the Disney stuff you've just described, and you alluded to it earlier on about the Crypt Keeper. It was basically, it's in the script, it's in the visual of the throat, and so on. Do you have a process for finding a voice for a character, or is it different every time?
it's got to be different every time because they give you different amounts of information. I'd say, I get anywhere from you know a couple of auditions each week to a dozen. I mean, um, voiceover stuff, and you get so little of it because there's so many good people out there now.
Mhm.
And now working at home because of the pandemic and whatever, I have more of an advanced studio set up than I needed before for my auditions because I really only had what I needed set up to actually audition.
Mm.
And now, of course, I've updated everything so that I can actually record, over the internet and stuff to their studio and do ADR on my computer screen and good mic and a soundproof room and the whole deal. And so, and you get different things. Sometimes they give you a whole Bible that goes along with the character of what his background is, especially in games and stuff. They want you to understand his dynamic and pictures. And then sometimes there's no picture, they have no very little description of what they want. They just say he's this age and he's, from here or not from there. And they probably get 50 different versions of that and they listen to it and whatever one everybody agrees on. Because, very often, you're probably one person sitting there going, oh, I just love what he did. I just love what he did. Everybody's like, I'm not hearing it. I'm not hearing. So, you don't know what you're dealing with in terms of that. Um, as a result, a lot of the work you get is you're requested for. I mean, I was the original voice of Deadpool um, when he first went from page to games in all the Ultimate Alliance games and X-Men Legends and these games. And they thought of me because of the Crypt Keeper, because he talks to the camera, he's sarcastic and funny, and but as he evolved, he got bigger and more muscular, and they hired somebody who was had more of that kind of sound to it, and and they hired me to play other characters, Pyro and whatever other characters that I came into play, but nobody knew that Deadpool was going to become like a movie franchise and stuff like that, so. Um, now of course there are more people that appreciate the fact that I voiced Deadpool than I ever did, in the beginning, um, because of who he, what a great character is and where he's become, how he's evolved. But as in everything, if you asked me early in my career if the thing that I'm the most remembered for is the voice of the Crypt Keeper, I'd be like, what? The guy in the comic book? You can remember me as that? Maybe when I'm 80. you know, you're going, because I loved, they used to have a thing in Baltimore. I mean, obviously, when we were kids, we didn't even have videotape. So there was no videotape. There was no way to
Of course
record
not.
the shows. You had to look at the guide, the newspaper guide, and my parents were too cheap to buy TV guide, so we'd have to look through the newspaper, of the what's on TV. And but I knew it, like I think it was 4:30. This movie came on every day called Twilight Movie in Baltimore, where I grew up, and they would have everything from a Doris Day movie to all the sci-fi movies from the 50s and 60s, like, you know, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman and Mothra and Ultraman and stuff like that. But they also had all the Universal horror monster movies. And whenever those came on, forget it. I mean, Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein is still my favorite horror slash comedy. And, you know, Lon Chaney Jr.'s Wolfman is still my favorite Wolfman. And, you know, Bela Lugosi is still my favorite vampire. And, you know, these things. And I would get these models. They had these models. I think what was the Aurora models, I think the company was. And
Yeah,
you'd
me
build
too.
those. And yeah.
Yeah.
I think I still have the guillotine one, you know, on a shelf at my parents' in my old bedroom. But the other ones, I think, you know, every kid gets to that age where they would go and blow up their models with fireworks, you
Yeah.
know, in a sandbox somewhere.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the fate that happened to all my Frankenstein. But you know, I love that stuff, and I would always ask my mom if I could order stuff from the back of the comic books. You know, they'd have like a monkey in a teacup, or you know, you could order it's like, you know, sea
Sea
monkeys,
monkey. Yeah.
you know, and but they had a 6-foot cutout of Frankenstein you could order. Oh, do you remember the submarine? You could
Yeah.
order a submarine, a 2-man submarine. I'm like, what the hell? There's no way. First of all, I wouldn't get in a submarine. Where am I going to go down to the reservoir and put the submarine in there and drown? You know, it's like it's probably cardboard or something. I don't know. And how can they afford to give it to you for $18? You know, it's like,
There's a book. There's a book. Somebody's found them all and found photographs of them. I can't where they show you what you actually got for your money. And you're absolutely right.
oh,
The
I gotta
submarine was
find
made
that.
out of cardboard.
I gotta find that. I gotta find that. If you, you know, send me the name of the book if you can
I
find it
will.
or
I will.
remember it.
Yes, I will do it.
Please
Well,
do
awesome.
that. That would be. I would just. That wouldn't even just go up on my. That would be like, you know, sitting on my coffee table all the time, or at least next to the toilet or something. You know, somewhere where people would have to see it. You know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I was fascinated to read, when I was researching your work, you mentioned you started off in theatre, but you've also done theatre recently. You've done musicals recently. You've done Reefer Madness, the musical, on both
Which was
stage
maybe the
and
most fun
film.
I've ever had in my whole career. You know. I mean, where I know Three Guys Naked was really the thing that launched my career from being somebody who like could get hired occasionally to, wow, that guy could do a lot of different things. Um, Reefer Madness was one of those things that showed that, you know, you could hang with some of the best. And you know, I got a call from Andy Fickman, who is the director, and Andy's gone on to direct all kinds of movies for Disney and some other and series on the Disney. You know, I mean, he's really accomplished. At the time when I first met Andy, he was running the development department for uh, Bette Midler, and you
Wow.
know, and she was trying to develop stuff with comedians and stuff like that. And Andy and I had a mutual friend, and he called me in and met with him, and we got on immediately. You know, he had a great sense of humor, and we were laughing and stuff like that. So I was in the middle of, I don't know, I was doing a bunch of different stuff. We're talking about 1998.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, something like that. When we first started in LA, maybe even earlier than that. And you know, Andy calls me and he goes, "Hey, you know, I got this musical. These guys, they like knew your work from Three Guys Naked when they were in college, and they love you. They actually wrote this character for you, and this is, you know, it's based on Reefer Madness that we all saw in elementary school. And they actually showed it to us as if they thought it was get us off drugs, but you know, of course, it became the movie to go get high and go see and laugh at, but." You know, it wasn't really, the character wasn't fleshed out yet in the thing, and I was just like, you know, Andy, I got a lot on my plate right now, and at the time I was, you know, doing more than one series, and you know, and really staying busy, and you know, which doesn't allow you to go do theater for free or $7, you know, a night to pay for your cab fare or whatever it was. And he goes, listen, this is going to be a lot of fun, and there's a lot of good people involved. And I said, okay, I'm in. So we started in some little 99-seat theater, and as soon as we put the show up overnight, it became like the thing to go see in LA. which no theater thing ever at that time was something that you went to see, that everybody had to go see in LA. And so it not only launched a rash of, you know, kitschy musicals based on B movies or, you know, old horror movies or, you know, whatever, like Reanimator and that kind of stuff. But it ran on and off for 2 years in a small little 99 seat theater. And many people who have gone on, you know, who are Broadway actors and, you know, big actors would come and go just because they wanted to be in it, you know, or to come play a part. Like when I went to do, I went to Australia to do the Three Stooges movie for Mel Gibson. We did the biopic of the Three Stooges movie. Um, you know, there was a really great actor who came in and filled in for me, you know, on stage, and I've made some lifelong friendships in that. And then it went on to, then all of a sudden they decided it was going to go to off Broadway in 2001, and sadly, 5 days before we opened, September 11th happened in New York, and we were downtown. I was living downtown, half a mile from, you know, ground zero, and it was just not a good experience. It was sad. It was, I mean, we still put the show up because people wanted to see stuff. They want, you know, people were stuck in the city and people wanted to go see something. I remember opening night, we had Leslie Stahl there, and, you know, Paris Hilton, and, you know, who wasn't, you know, Paris Hilton yet.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and all these people that were, you know, we were down near the NYU campus. So all the students were coming to see the show, and, you know, it wasn't going to last because without tourists coming into the city, and Broadway
Mm-hmm.
really, you know, which is shut down now, that was the first time it had been shut down. And, which was really sad. So that was a difficult time to do that show. But, you know, again, not everybody from the LA cast was brought in. They wanted to keep some, you know, they wanted to give it the New York austere. They wanted to, you know, and I was lucky enough to keep my part, but it had been so specifically written for me by Dan Studney and Kevin Murphy, who were the writers of the show, that it was, and Andy, of course, who was still directing it. And then Bob Greenblatt, who was running Showtime at the time, who was just one of my heroes in the business in terms of the shows that did I freeze? The shows that he's been involved in, and the networks that he's, you know, brought to life. You know, wanted to he's always loved musicals. In fact, I think he started out as a concert pianist, and, you know, wound up, you know, being producers of you know, shows for HBO, like you know, the Sopranos, and then of course running Showtime and running NBC, and, you know, bringing Dexter to television. I mean, all these great shows. And you know, he decided he wanted to make it, you know, shoot it as a movie musical. And you know, I was lucky enough to keep my part, and they got great people for that. I mean, you know,
Alan Cummings and
Stephen Ritter and Nev
So,
Campbell, and Anna Gasteyer was hysterical, and Amy Spanger, and, you know, of course Kristen Bell, who had done it off Broadway with us. You know, she and I had so much fun doing our scenes together. We had so much fun making that movie. I mean, truly, you know, because it's, you know, where a theater piece, you rehearse. Most movies you don't, as you know. You show up on this, especially if it doesn't have a big budget, and they go, okay, this is going to be your wife, and you're like, oh, how do you do? Okay, you know, now you've been together for 30 years, go. You know, we got to, of course, because they re-choreographed everything. We had to pre-record the music, we had to restage everything, new actors, the whole thing. It was a process like doing a real play. So that was a real treat, and you know, we had a great time up in Vancouver, all together shooting that, and again, more lifelong friendships. And every time I watch it, it's just, I mean, I don't get to watch it that much. It's not one of those things I go back and watch all the time, but I go, you know what, they did a really nice job with this. It was really fun. It was
Well,
another little musical that somebody posted on my Facebook page that I had done years ago. In fact, we were in the middle of shooting it when the OJ Bronco chase scene took place, and we watched it on a
wow.
little monitor on the cameraman's thing. And because I had worked with OJ, it was like, OJ, what the hell are you doing, man? Just like I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what was going on. But called Monster Mash, which of course was based on a play that Bobby Pickett, who wrote the Monster Mash. It is the
Oh
Monster
yeah,
Mash,
yeah.
and Bobby died way too young, but he was still alive at the time, and he had written a play called "The Bridge Is Out, You'll Have to Spend the Night," and is basically a story of these two kids that are out on Halloween night, dressed up like Romeo and Juliet, and their car breaks down, and the bridge is washed out, and there's this big old house next to them. And of course, in that house is Dracula and his wife, and you know somebody who's trying to revive Elvis and needs the young girl's soul, and there's the wolf boy, and and his mother played by Mink Stoll, and and I played Igor opposite Bobby Pickett's Dr. Frankenstein. Igor, you want the woman? Yes, master, please. um and we had so much fun doing that, and that was done on like, I don't know, $250,000 budget or something, maybe not even that much. And it came out so good. I hadn't even thought about that movie in a long time. Somebody had posted it on my Halloween had posted it on my Facebook page, and I took a look at it, and I was like, this was really fun to do, and it came out really good. I mean, we had
Right.
like, Carrie Ann Nava, who's on Dancing with the Stars, was one of our dancers in it, and the choreographer, who played the Wolf Boy, was Adam Shankman, who's gone on to, direct movies like House Party and all this stuff. I mean, it was really had great time with it. Again, with a great cast. Tony Award winner Anthony Crivello played Dracula. Who won Tony Award for Kiss of the Spider Woman, and
Oh yes, yes, yes. Gosh.
who's one of my dearest oldest friends. And it was just really amazing. We had a good time.
Wow, wow. Um, this time has flown past so fast. But I really would like not to let you go. Gosh, that was sorry, English. Um,
Very English. You just
um,
you just did it as a Spaniard in English.
yeah. I want to ask the crypt keeper, what luggage would you take with you on your final journey? Um, if I said to you, okay, you're just about to take that last big adventure and you've been told you've got to take your own entertainment, what movie would you take with you?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. You know, um, it's going to be a weird toss up, but it's a toss up between A Clockwork Orange and Lawrence of Arabia.
Ah, now there's two different films, both British filmmakers, both British
Yeah.
stars in British productions, one of whom's been on the Chattering Hour before. Yes, Malcolm. Uh, but why those two, or one of
I don't
those
know.
two?
I loved, I mean, even before people, Clockwork Orange became, like a mainstay, um, uh, cult film on on an international level.
Mm, mm,
I was living in New York when it was first released, and and I remember seeing it. I'm like, this is really not that far from what's happening in England right now with the punk scene, and this really is visceral, and but it's entertaining, and I'm sure
mm,
there are people that won't find it entertaining because it's disturbing, and it's got incredible actors, and I love Stanley Kubrick, and I love and everything about it.
mm.
And so, probably in my younger days, I probably watched that movie more than anything,
Oh,
other than The
interesting.
Wizard of Oz, which of
Right.
course you could throw that in as a third part of the
Okay.
toss up. But um, there are movies that I love to watch over and over again, and then others that you just remember so well, but you don't really feel the urge to go back and see them.
Yeah.
But for
Yeah.
some reason, there was always something in that just, it was a morality play. It was, something way beyond its time. It was a musical. It was it's got so much in it. It's good against evil. You know, um, you know, Malcolm McDowell is, still one of my favorite stars ever. And um, all these different things about it. Um, Lawrence of Arabia is just one of the best epics ever made. I mean, it's, by the time you finish watching it, you could go back and, the history that is involved in it too. And both my parents' ancestry are from the Middle East.
Yes.
Um, and, so it was interesting to see, what little we know about the Middle East revealed in that movie in such a colorful way. I mean, they just don't make epics like that
No.
anymore. It
No.
just, not unless it's completely computer generated.
Yeah.
And it was nothing computer generated about that movie. There was every single one of those extras was there on on the desert, and every single one of those camels, and every single one of those this and that, and it's just amazing. And the soundtrack is amazing, and
It's extraordinary. Yeah, and I remember watching it when it first came out on the big screen, and I kind of would love to see it again, but not on the small screen, 23-inch screen we have at home. You need it to be on a
yeah.
big something that's huge. What book would you take with you?
Uh, well, wouldn't be War and Peace. It would probably be the book that you mentioned that has all the different little things in the back of the comic book
Yeah, yeah.
that uh you know I always loved John Irving. I always loved, like, The World According to Garp, and Hotel New Hampshire, because the characters were so rich and you kind of live through them as you read it. um that's a tough one. You know, I'd probably take a medical book with me, because I love, um, I love, I love self-diagnosing shit. It's like you're like, oh God, my earlobes itch. What's that all about? Oh well, I could have some kind of weird kind of, kidney thing that's affecting my ear. It's just like it makes your imagination run wild. So that,
Yeah,
that that could be something really
yeah,
fun.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Travel.
yeah. I'm sorry, I could just picture the Crypt Keeper going
Yes,
through
of
a big
course.
manual doing it like that. What about a musical album?
Gosh, there's so many good ones. It's funny because even though I've done a bunch of, musicals, the last big musical that I did was at Lincoln Center, The Glorious Ones, written by Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty, who wrote Ragtime and Once on This Island, and Anastasia, and that kind of thing. Really about a commedia troupe in the 14th century. And a Flaminio Scala, and I played the Dattore, and I got to do all my pantomime and stuff that I used to do on the street, which was kind of fun. And it always wanted to work at Lincoln Center, so that was, a real treat. And that soundtrack is really incredible. But I don't like to listen so much to the stuff that I was in. But Jesus Christ Superstar has always been one of the most amazing soundtracks ever to listen to in terms of a musical. And I know that's more of an opera than a musical, but at the same time, it
It's
is. And
Lloyd
then
Webber. Yeah,
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 and there's Les Mis. I mean, Les Mis can take you. You can listen to it over and over and over again, and it can take you someplace different just listening to it.
yeah.
So those are a toss up.
Okay.
Obviously, I like the things that have complexities to them. That you know, um,
Yeah,
you know. I'm sure
yeah.
there's some people that would just love Rocky Horror Picture Show because then they'd act it out every time they played it. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, no, I can get that. What about a food or beverage?
Maryland blue crabs are my favorite. Had them on my birthday last week. I grew up eating, the steamed crabs. They steam with this hot
Right,
spice,
right, right,
and it brings back my childhood. It brings back, and it's my favorite food. I mean, for sure.
right.
Not easy to travel with, but not as easy to say like beef jerky. But uh, That's yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And a
Okay.
good, I drink beer with those, but there's nothing like a good Rhone style blend as something to drink. So
Okay. Okay. And what about a piece of visual art?
a piece of visual art. Probably this piece right here. This was done by a friend Moro Masakudo, who's a famous and infamous Japanese artist who used to be my neighbor years ago. And this is one of his original pieces. This is Plum
Wow.
Tree. He does a bunch of prints and stuff too. In fact, you probably go into most sushi bars and you see his work because he's so revered with his work. But this piece is haunting, and it's because my wife's teaching downstairs. I'm actually in our spacious bedroom, and it sits next to her bed. And when I wake up in the morning, I feel like I'm under this big plum tree every day.
Wow.
Um, but he's
Wow.
always been one of my favorite artists. I've always loved Erte, but that was kind of, that was kind of more of a youthful style of artist. I've
Mm.
always loved Picasso, always loved. Um, but I think I, I Vincent Van Gogh's stuff is so. How do they pronounce his name in England? Because in America everybody's like Vincent Van Gogh, and if you go Vincent Van Gogh, they're like, well, yes, I was in Amsterdam, and that's how they pronounced it. So but it's kind of like you know, is it
Gogh.
Porsche or Porsche?
Yeah.
Is it
Vincent van Gogh.
Van Gogh,
Van
which I think
Gogh.
is probably the proper way to say
We
it.
we were watching a documentary on him the other day, and now, of course, my mind is freezing, but I'm pretty certain it's Van Gogh
Yeah,
when the nice gentleman from the museum, the Vincent van Gogh Museum, was saying his name. I swear it was a
fantastic.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I do love the Impressionists. I mean, Botticelli is not an Impressionist, but probably my favorite museum to go see art in is still the Uffizi in Florence because of the Botticellis, and of course the proximity to going in to see the David, and so the Renaissance art is. I mean, you could walk through a museum and go, been there, done that. If you looked at any one of those paintings by itself, you'd be like, oh my God. But when there's a whole museum of them, you're like, yeah, it's another guy on a horse. There's another, yeah. Oh, great. Another Renaissance Jesus, and you go by, and then all of a sudden there's something that stops you and you're like, holy crap, God, there is a God. And you sit and look at that work, and it just, it takes you. And Botticelli's work has always done that for me.
Right, right. I have a tip if you ever want to. We were once left with an hour to do the whole of Musée d'Orsay in Paris, which is a good 2.5 hours, but we had an hour and we worked out it was going to be 30 seconds a picture. So literally it was look at it, stare at it. Okay, what can I get? Okay, it's 30 seconds. We've got to move on. And it was just the most extraordinary thing because I was looking, I was really, really, really looking at it because I thought, I can't just gaze or, do anything. I've got to really concentrate on this and
Yeah,
really try and understand it and admire the
quality instead of
technique.
quantity. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
my
yeah.
wife and I did that a couple years ago. We went in the middle of winter. What I mean, between like early December when we knew other people wouldn't be traveling, but we went to all the Christmas markets in different parts of Europe and Munich and Paris and England and uh,
Sure.
Edinburgh and these different things. And we went into. We literally spent. We had an hour and a half or something in the Louvre, and of course, we had to fight through the tourists just to sit and look at the Mona Lisa for a short amount of time. But we just decided we would go see a few things and just spend the time doing that instead of trying to see all we could see.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, extraordinary. And we just finish up one luxury, one thing that's not any mentioned above, anything that you just that little piece of pleasure.
uh, it's either nail clippers or pornography.
I've not
Or
thought
an
of the.
inflatable love doll. No, I'm kidding. You know, God, that's a tough one, boy. A luxury. Well, being the television addict that I am, I guess I would take. Well, I mean, it was certainly. Gosh, that's really a tough one. A
Mhm.
luxury item. You know. Hmm.
We can install cable in your crypt.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, I think
You
we'll give
know.
you cable and an endless supply of guides and so on.
Yeah. You know what? I want dish TV so that I get like the full NFL package.
Okay. Not a problem.
It would probably be really nice clothing. I always like. I mean, I don't get to dress up anymore. Like I had my wife for my birthday get me a really nice tracksuit because I was tired of sitting around in my pajamas. And I was like, at least I could just look like one of those guys that are so wealthy that all they wear is tracksuits. Like like the actor in was it Black as Fuck or whatever. It's like, I don't know if you've seen that show, but he's he always trying to be, he's older, but he's trying to try to keep up with the younger
Right.
black creatives, and he wears like the gold chain and the tracksuits. Of course, they're like Gucci tracksuits. They're all like $3,000 and stuff. But you know, I got my Ralph Lauren, and it matches
Right.
everything else with the crypt hat. So,
Absolutely. Cool.
but I always loved really nice sweaters and nice clothes. Like, when I go to England, I always try to, or to Ireland, I always try to get like a nice cashmere sweater or something that I can.
Yeah, sweaters came up when I was talking to Amanda Weiss. A sweater came up as a choice, and yeah, I get that. John, this has been extraordinary. I have enjoyed myself so much. Thank you
Oh,
very
good. I'm
much
so
indeed.
glad. You ask good questions. It's like you usually get a lot of the same questions, and I really enjoyed speaking with you about it. It's brought up a lot of memories, and I still feel like a young man in a lot of ways, but at the same time, it makes me feel like I have a certain level of accomplishment of what I set out to accomplish as a person, and use my, you know, somebody who struggled as a student, as a kid, to find something that you feel like you can excel in, and also to make a living at something
Mm.
you love doing. And I really feel fortunate in that. I worked hard for it and continue to work hard for it. But, I think some people just go, well, I deserve to do this and I deserve to be that, you know, kind of like you know, I won't get political, forget it.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Be careful what you ask for. You may get it.
Wow, that was extraordinary. There's a no prize for working out the number of voices that John did during that interview. Quite extraordinary. What a wonderful man. And next week, I'm joined by the wonderful and lovely Amanda Weiss from A Nightmare on Elm Street, Silverado, and much more. Join me then, and in the meantime, be safe and well.